When the news first reached Istanbul in the late 15th century, it sounded almost unreal. A strange new continent, an entire world lying beyond the Atlantic Ocean. Spain and Portugal rushed across the seas like wolves who had smelled blood. Gold, spices, land, souls to convert. The discovery of the Americas reshaped everything. But while Europe scrambled to carve out empires, one question stands out. Where was the Ottoman Empire? This was the same Ottoman state that dominated 3 continents, controlled the richest trade routes on Earth, and fielded some of the most powerful armies of the early modern world. Yet, as European ships crossed the Atlantic, plundered cities, and built colonies, the Ottomans, at the height of their power, did almost nothing. No grand fleets sent west, no Ottoman settlements, no competing empire in the New World. Why? To find the real answer, we must first understand how the Ottomans saw the world in the moment Europe stumbled into the Americas, because from their point of view, the New World wasn't worth chasing. From Istanbul, the world looked very different. The Ottomans already sat at the crossroads of global trade. Caravans from China, ships from India, merchants from Persia and Arabia. All of them passed through Ottoman territory. To them, the heart of wealth wasn't some distant ocean. It was the old world markets they already controlled. Even more important, the Ottomans weren't a maritime empire, at least. Not yet. Their strength came from land-based expansion. Cavalry, infantry, sieges and cities, not far-flung islands across a stormy ocean. And the Atlantic? To the Ottomans, it looked like a vast, empty, dangerous void. There was no economic incentive strong enough to justify sending massive fleets into waters they had never mastered. No maps, no bases, no ship designs built for month-long ocean voyages. While Spain and Portugal had been perfecting Atlantic sailing for centuries, the Ottomans were perfecting everything else. From their perspective, a risky expedition westward had no clear reward, certainly not compared to conquering Egypt, Mesopotamia, the Balkans, or North Africa, regions tied to ancient trade and old wealth. The Americas were not part of the Ottoman worldview yet. Even if they had wanted to explore the Atlantic, timing was a disaster. The 1500s to 1700s were the most chaotic centuries the empire ever faced. Nearly every decade brought a new war. Endless conflict with the Habsburgs in Central Europe, brutal expensive wars with Safavid Persia in the East rebellions, and unrest in newly conquered territories, maintaining control of the Red Sea and Eastern Mediterranean, internal political struggles in the palace. These weren't small border fights. These were massive, draining conflicts that consumed the empire's attention and resources. While Spain could pour its energy into crossing the ocean, the Ottomans had to hold together a huge and diverse empire stretching from Budapest to Yemen. And then there was one more problem: distance. To reach the Atlantic, the Ottomans would first need to break through the combined naval power of Portugal, Spain, Venice, and later, even the French and British. The Mediterranean was already a battlefield. Crossing the Atlantic? That was an entirely different universe. For an empire fighting on 5 fronts, building a colonial navy was simply not realistic. It's easy today to imagine what might have happened if the Ottomans had sailed west. An Ottoman Mexico City, a Turkish-speaking Caribbean, a Muslim presence in early America. These ideas sound dramatic, but historically, the empire made the rational choice. Because by the time the Ottomans might have considered colonizing the Americas, the entire game had already changed. Europe had superior ocean-going ships, established Atlantic routes, fortified colonial ports, massive financial incentives, decades of experience in long-distance sailing. The Ottomans would have been entering the arena far too late, facing multiple rivals who had mastered a kind of warfare, and a kind of sailing they simply didn't specialize in. But there is one more twist. The Ottomans did reach the New World, just not in the way most people imagine. Turkish ceramics, coins, and artifacts from the empire made their way into the Americas through trade networks centuries later. Slaves taken from Ottoman territories were transported by European empires across the Atlantic, and Ottoman diplomats carefully watched European colonial expansion, knowing it would eventually reshape global politics. The Ottomans didn't ignore the Americas. They simply chose not to fight for them. When you put all the pieces together, the answer becomes clear. The Ottomans weren't focused on naval exploration. The Atlantic was outside their economic and strategic vision. They were consumed by wars in Europe and Persia. They lacked Atlantic-compatible ships and navigation experience, and by the time the value of the New World became obvious, Europe already controlled it. The empire wasn't blind or incapable. It was simply invested in a different world. While Spain and Portugal gambled across the ocean, the Ottomans built a massive land empire that shaped Eurasia for centuries. Two different visions of power, two different definitions of empire. And in that sense, the Ottomans didn't fail to colonize the Americas. They chose to dominate the world they already understood.